Hey, Peter.
Hey, Jeremy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
It's
to
good
see
to see
you.
you. Yeah. We need to get our intro going or something on the show. I don't know. We have to
Yeah,
figure out how to do that.
yeah. Wow, two weeks since we did this, right? Because last week
Yeah.
was with Benoit joining us, which was a great experiment. I want to do more guests and opens, but I think it was a different dynamic and it was interesting. But I'm happy to get back to our regular discussion of what happened in the last 2 weeks. What did we write
Yeah.
about? And ask some questions to each other.
Yeah, me too. Actually, it's the format was great with Benoit. I'm glad we went over time and gave him the full hour. It was, and
Yeah,
if you haven't
yeah,
listened to it, you should really listen to it.
yeah. I think it was a unique opportunity to ask
Mm,
someone who's working in this very
mm,
special industry, creating software and hardware together
mm.
for children, educational toys, how they use AI or how they are considering using AI and what are the principles they take not to use AI for, at least in this form, because
Mm.
yeah, they are creating content. So yeah, it was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, yeah. No, and yeah, I think the other fun thing is going to be to check in on their progress over time.
Oh
That'll
yeah,
be
I already put an event in our calendar, show calendar, that we need to do the check-in on how the 4-day work week is going for them. So
yeah.
I'm curious about that indeed.
Just out
Cool.
of just out of
Yeah.
interest for you, Peter, I kind of felt that you might be slightly skeptical about the idea, and certainly, that was came across a little bit to me, at least in your article about the
Yeah.
Hungarian telco. And I mean, I
Yeah.
know you played devil's advocate a little bit in interview
Yeah.
with Benoit, but I'm just curious where you ended up landing, where you are in your feelings about the whole 4-day work week. Uh,
Well, here's the deal. I would love it to work. It's so attractive
mm,
that I I have a natural feeling of challenging it because it's too
mm,
good to be true. There are these things like this investment scheme that's too good to be true. It sounds too good. You need to dig into it and find some faults in it and disprove it. This is the feeling I have with the 4-day work week. I would love it to work. I think it's like the more time and focus we can have on our families and personal lives, the better it is. I'm a little bit skeptical about if it can work. Like if I, especially the way they implemented it at Lunii, that they expect the same, or Benoit was thinking
mm,
that they even expect higher performance in shorter time. I'm a bit skeptical about it. I
mm.
think it those 4 days can turn out to be very stressful, and yes, of course, then a 3-day weekend waits for you, but I think I would advocate for trying to make the 5 days in the week less stressful and living a little bit more slack. And what
Mhm,
topics we mentioned in the show also, to have some dedicated time about learning,
mhm.
some feel totally comfortable taking a 2-hour lunch break, just a little bit. I'm afraid that companies going to the 4-day work week, they cram everything into the 4 days and they have a very stressful, very burnout inducing 4 days,
Mm.
and then taking a break on
You
the
cross the
longer break.
finish line after 4 days, but you're exhausted. You need 3 days to recover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
But
think,
I
like,
don't know. I don't know.
that's the challenge, like,
Yeah.
I guess it depends on so many factors, but I think one factor is, what is the kind of business you're trying to build? Are you trying to build, um, kind of like a VC-funded, high growth,
Yeah.
whatever place? Or are you trying to build, maybe more of a bootstrapped company that doesn't have to be beholden to anyone, that can be profitable, finds your product market fit, and can be
Mm,
profitable without having to grow by 30%, 60%, or whatever
mm,
year on year, and 10% growth or 5% growth is
mm.
just fine. And
Or
I think,
0% growth.
or zero, just being like being a sustainable business.
Mm.
And I think, like, that changes a lot then, the model and everything as well. Of the
I
environment.
don't. I mean, without answering your question, I don't think this is a unique dilemma to our industry. Like you can see it
Mm,
in the, for example, the restaurants, like you have the challenge or dilemma of having a restaurant that
Mhm.
can operate itself and sustain, like a mom and pop place, or immediately when you open, you should think about franchising and chains and
Mhm.
to and I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think I would love to work at a company that's not forced to double its size every year or.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, to be devil's advocate again, a company that's just sustainable can be very fragile also,
Mhm.
like a
Yeah,
little
I think so.
change in
Yeah.
the market and then you're done.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like I liked that. What I liked about your take was let's make the 5 day a week sustainable
Yes,
and healthy.
that's the
Like
point.
step
Yes.
one, let's do that. Like let's build in the slack time within that and sustainability of the, which is, I think I wrote a post a while ago about maximum sustainable pace versus maximum
Mm,
pace. And I think this relates to that as well. And so I
indeed.
really like,
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. Where,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would even say that companies should focus on that and not on the 4 or 5 days.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
people working at companies should demand the focus on that and not
Yeah.
necessarily the 4 days. I don't
Yeah.
know, but
I
it's
will.
definitely interesting. And
Yeah.
to be fair, I love that they are doing it. Like
Me too.
I think it takes a lot of courage for
Hmm.
a company like them, a startup.
Hmm.
I can imagine they have all their challenges with Chinese copycats
Hmm.
and big companies and everything.
Hmm.
So kudos for them for trying to make a better place to work.
Yeah, and for the founders for following their principles, applying principles about what's behind the company
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
way of and that expression of it in a 4 day work week. So I think, great. I really want this. I want that experiment to succeed. I want others to
yeah,
succeed. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I could paint my perfect picture, it would be probably would be a 4 day work week, but it would be in a more of an organization that's focused on like some kind of sustainable existence, that
Yeah,
also in terms of like what we're talking about, and not focused on hyper growth, but
yeah,
being profitable.
yeah,
And then when you get to profitability, making sure that you've got a solid margin, but then
yeah.
using that position somehow to through the business of the company, whatever it is, to
Mm,
make it a kind of a just make it have an impact in that whatever, if let's say, I don't know, like if you're serving, I don't know, if you're serving restaurants, I don't know,
mm-hmm,
picking because you said restaurant earlier, but if you're software for restaurants,
mm,
serving, having a voice in that segment of the industry, and but like just yeah, just being kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to express myself in a sense that just making an impact, but not saying I'm going to take over the world and be the only point of sale or whatever the
mm, mm-hmm,
software thing is
mm-hmm,
you're
mm-hmm,
doing for
mm-hmm,
restaurants.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I think it can be a really good place
Yeah,
to
yeah.
exist.
Not every company needs to put a dent in the universe.
No, well, that is a dent. It's just how big a dent
Just
do
a
you need to
small
make?
one. Yeah. Well, if you're talking about the universe, then the sizes are kind of coming with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And to be honest, I'm at the point in my life where I would be happy for a 80 4 day work week. Like
Mm,
I'm ready to sacrifice some of my compensation to
yeah.
have a more sustainable and yeah, 4 day work week.
I
Yeah.
think it's been 10 years that I've said that. I remember I had someone that worked for me that who came back from maternity leave and asked for that, and I was a big supporter of it.
Mm,
And you know, we did the salary reduction for them as part of that. But you know what, I remember at the time thinking, you know what, I would love that right now.
yeah,
I don't,
yeah, yeah,
I earn enough. I could live on a little bit
yeah,
less, but have that day.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Why do you? I mean, I don't want to go too deep in this topic,
Mhm.
but it's really interesting. Why do you think it's not so popular? Why don't we see job posts saying we are looking for someone 4 days a week? And yes, you should know that the compensation is not comparable to a 5 day
Mm,
job. I don't think I ever saw anything like this.
why are people being forced back into the office? I think it's business, it's pressure. I just think that it's, I've talked about theory X and theory Y before,
Hmm.
and I think it's partly this kind of Theory X mindset, this Taylorism, Tayloristic thinking, like in management, and it's pervasive and it's everywhere, and there's nothing. It's hard to criticize it in the sense that I would say it's the natural logic, of in a sense it's counterintuitive to see the world in a slightly different way in one sense. I think we're slowly drifting towards away from that as being accepted common view, but it's quite slow because it's I don't know. It's hard to put an exact figure on it. I think how much psychological safety do you have in a lot of organizations, Peter? Not that much.
It depends on the organization,
but
I think that's easier to achieve than convincing a board that we're just going to slow down a bit.
But the people who do succeed, they're people like there's a company called Timpsons in the UK. They basically have little shops that do shoe repair, and they make your keys, and I think they do number plates, and they do a bunch of stuff like that. They're one of the best employers in the UK. They have like the people work there for years and years and years, and it's family owned. It's been several generations of family, and they just have a different philosophy. Their number one measure of company success is their employee happiness index.
It's still the founders who own it, right?
Yep. The family who, so, and I think that's, when you have, Guinness, the company Guinness that was created as a social enterprise to transform Ireland because alcoholism was so huge and rampant because of hard alcohol.
Yeah.
And so Guinness was introduced to give something else to drink that was slightly healthier. And that meant that men didn't go home and beat their family at the end of the night when they were blind drunk. I'm not joking. And then Guinness became one of the largest employers of people in Ireland, and they made cars, they made everything. They made literally the entire infrastructure and they employed. So, you should go to the Guinness factory in Ireland if you're ever in Dublin, if you're ever there. But it's a fantastic story. It was a Christian family, and through their values that they did that. And obviously now it's it's a different kind of stock market. It's driven by the stock market and all the rest, and that's sadly the way companies go. But owners who have principles can often make a radical difference for their staff and the community around. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know this about Guinness, and it's interesting that this, as I understand, it's a fully private company, because if today something like this would happen, I'm pretty sure there would be some government incentives or some kind of. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It's just interesting that the company who's by the definition living for profit is choosing this path.
I think there's others. I think there's lots. There's a lot of social businesses. We don't glorify them because they're not in the top of the stock market, like Apple or Tesla or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. I think this leads into a rabbit hole that we should maybe back out of. But
we should pop the stack a little bit up.
Yeah, exactly.
We went down anyway. Sorry for that diversion.
No. I think it's interesting, and it's just questioning a lot of. I don't know the good expression for this, like deep inherent de facto truths that I believe in, like capitalism is good, and the way it's good is because it's very efficient. It's rooting out the inefficient companies and making the efficient ones successful, and it's just questioning a lot of those principles, or not even principles, like the truth, almost economic laws.
Maybe we should discuss that at some point.
Maybe we should. Maybe with a beer and maybe with a live show, like in-person show. All right, let's get into what we wrote about in the last 2 weeks. Actually, you know what? I can be a bit selfish and start with one of the things that I wrote, because I think I can connect it about the happiness thing that I wrote about on Friday.
Yeah, let's do that. That's a good connection, actually.
Yeah. So I can tell you the story of what happened there. I was just browsing Reddit, and I saw someone creating statistics about a visualization actually of how much time people in various countries spending on eating and drinking in a day. And in itself, it was really, actually, I can show it on my screen, I
I was
think.
just about to share my screen, actually.
I
If you
can
want,
share yours so I
you
can
talk and
continue.
I'll bring it up.
Yeah, let's do that. So it was interesting to start with because USA is the lowest. They spend 1 hour per day eating and drinking. And France is the highest. That spends more than 2 hours per day eating and drinking. And I mean, I find it fascinating, and maybe we know a few people who are French culturally but live in the US. How are they adapting? If you're one of them watching us, then please let us know how much struggle is your life. But my question to myself was that I had an assumption that more time spent eating and drinking, and well, especially I think eating, and I'm assuming being together with people, it makes people happier. And I was like, okay, I have like half an hour before I need to send out this newsletter, or maybe it was 1 hour. Let's try to find the data. So I know this great website called Our World in Data. You can have a lot of data on anything. They are collecting surveys and all kind of quantitative and qualitative data and making it available for people to get charts on or download. So I found this data set about self-reported happiness. So they kind of use this Gordian solution of how do you measure happiness by just asking people how happy they feel. And I correlated it the countries where people are more I want to use my words well, because this is where this data can fall apart. So I compared to the first data set how much time people spending on various activities during the day in different countries. I compared this data to how much people are reporting that they are happy, what is their self-reported happiness. So I wanted to find, these are two data sets, numbers per countries, and I wanted to find correlations. So I compared to all the activities that were in the data set about working and doing non-paid work, everything with the happiness data set. And the correlations were really interesting. I mean, obviously I was looking for the answer about correlation with eating and drinking, and it turns out there is almost nothing.
Yeah, it's in the middle here.
It's really nothing. But a few things jumped out. Like one of the first was, and this is how I can connect this to the return to office, is the highest negative correlation was about traveling to work and study, to and from work, like commuting.
Yeah.
And negative correlation means that those countries where people are reporting themselves being more happy, they are correlating with those countries who are traveling less to work. And of course, correlation is not causation. So maybe there is, I'm not saying this is causing their happiness or unhappiness, but there is definitely something like I find it fascinating. Yeah.
I think I've seen some other studies that are related to commute length and commute type, and basically kind of almost any commute is not very positive, except if you walk or cycle.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And even like a long cycle is actually positive versus like, you know, a long trip in a car or in a public transport or something like that. So, yeah, there's I mean, obviously, yeah, it's funny. It's kind of
I can resonate with that because I've been working a lot remotely, and before that there was a time when the office I was working at was a 10-minute walk from our flat, and sometimes I took the longer route, or sometimes I took a bicycle and went a little detour. And even when working fully remote, I miss commuting. Sometimes I had this ritual of getting up, taking a walk, and then coming home and working. So it's interesting to see that there is actually data proving that.
I will say there's one I have a personal data point on this, which is that when I first graduated, my first job was I was working as a software engineer for a company that worked on the operating system of the Symbian smartphones,
Oh yeah, we talked about it the other day.
my commute, I went originally I started and I went by train, and it was from Manchester out towards Macclesfield,
Hmm.
and it was awful. I had to walk. It was just an awful commute. And it wasn't a very long train journey, but it just
Yeah.
painful, the trains and everything else, and then to walk and from the station. And I got myself a motorbike, and I took the backcountry roads, and I have to say that was the most fun moments of my day.
Yeah.
It's like uh, f- going on backcountry roads. It was a 40-minute bike ride. It wasn't a short motorbike trip. It's quite far, but
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it, even in the rain. So yeah.
I found that if you have the facilities in the office, it can make a big difference. Like
Mm,
I used to have one of my first, I think my second workplace was like 30 kilometers
mm,
from where I used to live, and I often took the bike because I found that taking the car or taking the public transport or taking the bike, it took exactly the same time
mm,
because there was just so big traffic in the city. But I really needed to have a shower at the office, so not
mm.
every office has that. But once I think it's there, it can really make a difference.
Yeah, or you just kind of go in the toilets and do a kind of a towel wash
Yeah,
of
cat wash
yours.
we call it in Hungary, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it exists in English. So
Oh,
yeah,
we have a different one. It's you're like this. I think you call it an Irish shower or something like that. It's just where you spray deodorant on yourself and that's it.
okay, wow, that nice. Um, so yeah, so that jumped out that the biggest
Mm,
negative correlation was commuting. The positive one, the biggest ones were shopping, which not just the obvious, shopping, but also like groceries and everything.
mm,
The must do shopping. It's a very I would simplify and say positive activity. I'm not
mm,
going to go into the self-report everything details. Also, volunteering and doing
mm,
sports, and these two are really interesting. Like
mm,
it's there's a bigger positive correlation than sleeping, religious activities,
mm.
a lot of stuff that maybe somebody would say that it has a bigger positive impact on their life.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I was going to ask
interesting.
you, what did anything in your views change after you did the analysis? And it seemed to me that what you wrote about, you triggered about the volunteering and sports for
Mm.
you was like a kind of an aha observation.
It is, yeah. It was like that. I mean, I knew how. I know a little bit the biochemistry about why sports make you feel good with the
Mm,
endorphins and everything after an exercise. Volunteering, I guess, probably there is something similar.
mm,
I found the effect also that I unfortunately don't volunteer enough or very rarely volunteer, but when I do,
mm,
it's really a good feeling.
mm,
Like when the migrant crisis started in Hungary, and we suddenly found a lot of just desperate people not
mm,
knowing what's going to happen to them. So I was managing director at a company at then, and we did a quick organized charity at the office at the Hungarian side of this company, and I said, okay, we're going to double the offers of whatever the employees were coming up with, and then we organized a run to a big
mm.
shop and bought some sleeping bags and all kind of necessary stuff, and then delivered it, and it really made me feel good. Like I'm not saying I did it for but if somebody is doing volunteering for selfish reasons, all the better. Like
Yeah.
yeah, why not? It's
I
still a
I
net
think,
positive.
is it really selfish to say I'm volunteering to make myself feel good? Like, I think it's
I mean, if you ask the question, is it selfish to say I'm doing an activity to make myself feel good? Well, it's
mm,
by definition selfish, no? Although no, maybe not, because selfish implies some kind of negative in it.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I think what you're saying is kind of backed up by lots of other studies
yeah,
and research, that doing altruistic acts is actually and makes us way happier than doing stuff for ourselves. And so if you want to have a happy, fulfilled life, you should actually
yeah.
give part of yourself to other people. I mean, I think obviously, as parents, we discover that we need to do that a lot.
I didn't think about
But
yeah.
um,
I'm a volunteer father.
but I think it can go well beyond that,
Yeah.
and
Oh
certainly
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
that's been
and
yeah.
I'm finding that finding a local community somewhere
Mm,
local where you can have an impact,
mm,
it's much better than like I don't know, sending 50 euros
mm,
for a charity in Africa. I
yeah.
mean, no offense to that, but
Please
I
don't do
think
that, by the way. Well, it might be controversial for me to say that, but
no, it's not. Maybe I will put in the show notes. There was an article like 20 something years ago about an economist in Africa pledging, asking people to please stop sending money. It's killing our economies. And
mm,
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
yeah, I'll leave it to Bill Gates to do that in a very scientific way.
exactly. Yeah, a lot of money is get wasted.
We're another rabbit hole, but I think it's
Yeah,
worth sharing like a personal story from my side. So, you know, I've seen I've grown up in a family where my parents basically their I would say their day job, what they did with their lives was to do altruistic things. I won't go
wow.
into in super detail, but and for a period of like a long time growing up, I was a Christian, and I think something the church does really well is the church has a great platform to do altruistic acts,
Hmm.
and a lot
Yeah.
of Christians get involved in that. And I see my siblings all involved in various activities, helping people get out of debt, helping people get off the streets, doing fantastic things in the community. And I think one of my reflections is as a kind of like someone who's more like secular now, there's less of that. If you go to church, you can easily connect to those programs and become part of it. But like for a lot of us who are living in a more kind of like, I would say, like non,
Hmm.
religious context, there's less. Well, I mean, there's things like Greenpeace and stuff that are out there, but there's less of these. You have to kind of like actively go out and seek it, rather than the people in your community. Like a lot of them are actually deeply involved in those activities, and that
Yeah.
makes it easier to access and get involved. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, because it sounds really good that find something local where you can have a tangible impact. But
Mm,
how do you start that? Like,
yeah.
there is a very good program in Hungary. It's a foundation who are very transparent with their
Mm,
finances, and what they are doing is they help. Well, this is what you're
mm,
describing. Help very unique people about just getting their getting them on their feet, like getting
mm,
an education so they can do
mm,
some job and have an income, or moving
mm,
from the street to rent a place, a
mm,
homeless person, or things like this. And what I really like in their approach is that they are showcasing these stories. Like they are sending a newsletter like,
mm,
we helped this month or this quarter this person doing this,
mm,
that's their background, this is where your money meant. And
mm.
I guess it's textbook how to run a charity thing, but it's really good to see that this is very local. And
Yeah.
my point is that it's not trivial to find these
No.
opportunities. So I can see how organized religion can help in this
Yeah.
with the communities around it.
Yeah. Well, I think those are worthwhile
Yeah, that was a good
diversion.
rabbit hole. Yeah, let's get out of it, and with a radical cut, we're not connecting too much. Let's talk
Well,
about the.
so because we're talking about your stuff, so we talk about your series of articles that you're working
We
on,
can
Peter.
continue with that. Okay,
Yeah.
so you ask questions.
Uh, let me share my screen again. Well, so it's been interesting actually. You wrote two articles,
Yeah,
part
yeah,
one and part
yeah,
two, because we didn't reflect back on it, so I think we can
yeah,
just cover the two together. But
yeah. Quick
I love this
disclaimer.
series, by the
Actually,
way.
I co-wrote it. Like I have a partner, Peter Batis, who's I've been knowing him since a long time. He used to help out when I was running this local site to help our hiring, but since then he moved on and does individual consulting, contracting work, just helping companies find tech talent, focusing on C-level at this point and internationally. So he has a lot of good experience in the whole recruiting and hiring process. So he's a good partner to write with. Hi, Peter, if you're watching this.
Yeah, and actually, I can start to see some of his inputs especially in the second article.
Yeah.
And I think that was really valuable. So yeah, and I, in this first one, you talk about capturing your preferences, and I guess like I had a couple of questions, and I'm interested to see how far we actually get, because we're going through time wise, but
exactly, yeah, we're already half an hour in.
I really like this idea. I think I'll do a short version is that this is definitely what I'm doing, right? While I am freelance, I'm just keeping an eye out for interesting roles, and my table of preferences, I would say for what it's not just about this, obviously, but is much more selective because of that. But I'm definitely, I think inherently we all need to do it. But I love that you articulate, like, write it down, get it out there, think it through. I think it's really helpful.
And what I wanted to get at is that there is no objective scientific method behind this. The value is not that you input all the data and at the end you get a decision that you should take this job or you should continue searching. The value is in the thinking. That is how important is remote work for me, or actually do I want to stay in this industry where I spent the last 2 decades, or actually I want to try something new, and how strongly do I feel this or that.
Yeah. How much would the tobacco or alcohol industry have to pay me for me to be okay with it?
Yeah. I you know what, I struggled a bit with that, because I can imagine an attractive offer from an alcohol industry whose main interest is not trying to get people addicted, but accept that people drink alcohol and find ways to nudge them in a more sustainable, healthier way to do that. So yeah, it's never black and white.
No, I'm not going to ask any. I'm not going to go into the. I'm tempted to go into that that sort of another diversion and fork.
Yeah, forget it.
The one I wanted to talk about actually was, I think this is quite a hot topic right now. This hands-onness of managers.
Yeah, that's a good topic.
And it's like, basically, I think, we talked about previously about like kind of we're moving into wartime. Companies are more cash constrained, and they're definitely rotating to having managers being kind of hands-on in, especially line managers, where maybe they manage a few people and or like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people even, and still expected to code, or some some range within that.
That's also something we should get into, but continue your question.
We should write about that, I think. Yeah. But or definitely discuss. But actually, the question for you is, how do you assess that in I mean, have you seen some telltale signs in the job descriptions? And how do you so you have your table of preferences around this one, but how do you actually assess that? And or do you have to wait till the interview stage, or like what have you seen?
So I'm going to give controversial or two answers, or I don't know. First, companies are very explicit. Like they are out front saying that besides the 10 years experience and this and this and this, you should be very familiar in this stack and contribute to code. I saw a lot of job descriptions like this. I would say if you have some experience on this, but I mean, I think most of engineering managers, not everyone, but a lot of them started out as ICs, so they have some software developer background. Usually the case is that it's a bit rusty and not really up to date, because they are not practicing it day to day, 8 hours a day. So I would say to those people, if otherwise the job post is attractive, start applying and go through this. I have a personal example. I'm not actively looking for a job now, but there was an interesting opportunity in Hungary, so I I applied and went through their interview processes. We didn't get to an agreement at the end, but there was a tech interview where I had to do some coding, which was very scary because I think it's been at least 15, but maybe 20 years when the last time I was paid for coding. I still do some coding for fun, but this is where I draw the line. Like I nobody paid for my coding skills in the last 15 years. And the coding interview went super well. Like I mean, that was the feedback I got also. I obviously passed the interview, but it went really well. So what I'm getting at is that do give it a shot, because the job descriptions are very often a Christmas wish list for companies. And there are studies that people, especially women or minorities, they don't dare to apply for jobs where they don't feel qualified, and
or
this can be
majorly overqualified.
Yeah, but I want to talk about the non-qualified part. So I really encourage everyone to try even applying for a job that requires strong hands-on capabilities, because maybe during the interviews, I mean, if otherwise the job post is attractive, because during the interviews it can turn out, like in my case, it turned out that they actually don't require any hands-on coding. They were just curious how will I, the question that I got in a later stage was that, okay, I'm not hands-on, but how, if there are two staff engineers or very high-level engineers disagreeing in my team, how do I resolve that conflict as a manager? And that gave me a good opportunity to explain the way I like to manage these situations, is that help them figure it out. Like they are technological leaders, so they should grow their skills of compromising and articulating their opinions. I talked a bit about RFCs and ADRs and everything. So it was a good discussion. I left out a part that the interviewer was nice enough to nudge me towards, to use the other experienced engineers in the company, like have a guild or some kind of platform where they can ask opinions. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm ready to call a technical decisions. I have a little technical background, but I want to be upfront that it's probably not going to be the best technical decision, because there's going to be a bigger luck factor in it.
Yeah, I think you need to be, no matter you need to understand what people are doing. You can take this to like an extreme level where we have people making IT decisions for our countries who don't know anything about IT, and they have like an arts degree, and they're just like, a politician, or they're appointed by a political appointee.
Are you saying it is a good example or a bad example?
I'm saying that it's a bad example. I mean, like, that's why
Yeah.
you need to understand the subject area, but then, like, obviously, decide if the company's looking. I mean, we're talking about hands-on managers, but if a company's looking for genuinely for a manager that codes, well, you can decide whether that's for you or not.
Yeah.
But like, obviously for you, Peter, senior level, I think it is important for a company to check what, can you have a conversation with a staff engineer, and can you help them come to a better decision for the company by being a good sounding board, because you understand the subject area,
Oh yeah. That's a very good point, and this is where I wanted to stop you during your question, that there are huge differences. It's being technical is a spectrum. It can have a lot of aspects that have nothing to do with coding, and maybe not even system design, but all this technical experience and expertise to be able to ask the right questions. If you hear about a new technology, how does it fit into the picture, to be able to spot potential weaknesses or advantages, or just understand quickly when it's explained to you. That's also being technical. And that's why I think, this aspect of being technical, I think it's important in a engineering manager.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So moving on to part two, and by the way, just for me, the part two, I think it's definitely the best of two. I just feel like
I agree.
every
We
part
put
of
more
this,
effort into this. Yeah.
every single part of this has, I think, golden nuggets and advice around. I think it's very everything is very actionable, and I recommend folks to check it out. I wanted to maybe just there's one part here about not having a single CV, and I mean certainly
That's
yeah.
really actually it's like a light bulb moment for some people who are used to, okay, I have my CV, I see a good job, I send it to the company and I wait for a call.
Mm,
And then like you should really use your CV as a targeted
mm-hmm,
advertisement of showing how you can
mm,
fit, how you can be the solution to the problem a company has.
mm, yeah.
And it's challenging if you don't have that much work experience, like if you're looking for
Mm,
especially the first but second job, but you can find ways, like
mm,
you had some activities in the university, you had some, hopefully you had some hobby projects, maybe you had some
mm,
volunteer activity, like whatever there is, you can find ways to emphasize and downplay some aspects of
mm.
your history.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice. I mean, actually, the approach that I've taken is LinkedIn has like it's the full length everything
Yeah,
in there. If you
same.
click in and read more, it's got it all there. But then I've actually used the LinkedIn have a CV builder that kind of
Hmm.
you can pull from all your stuff and then make an edited different version of it. And I've got two versions of that. One, and it's taking your advice again of like getting down to 2 pages and having like a 2 page version that's aimed at I have a kind of like a CTO, CPTO type one,
Hmm.
VP of engineering that's kind of aimed at that engineering leader role. And then I have one that's aimed more at the interim fractional
Hmm.
roles that I've been doing recently. So which is kind of a new one I created. And then depending on the context, I can just use
Yeah.
those. And that, but this is the thing I was going to ask you about, because I don't tailor my CV beyond that. I
Hmm.
just tailor it for the broad categories of the types of roles. But I was like, you were talking about tailoring the CV
Yeah.
for a job, and I was curious what you meant by that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, last time I had to do something like this was actually a few years ago when I finished my 10-year work at a company, being a managing director of a Hungarian entity of a US
Mm,
company. And the title managing director is very generalist. Like I was still very close to engineering, but I had a lot of experience in other general management areas, working with lawyers and finance and everything. So I had two base CVs because there were two kinds of
mm,
job I was applying for. One is the continuation of this, being a site lead for a
mm,
Hungarian site of an international company, and the other one is getting closer to engineering management and emphasizing those aspects. So I had these two basics, and when there was my strategy was always to apply to less companies but put more effort into those applications.
mm,
So when there was an attractive job post, I opened the corresponding CV, the managing director of engineering manager one, and I looked at the job post and I saw, okay, how can I shape a little bit the CV to match
mm,
better the
mm,
job post? A good example is for the engineering part is the tech stack. Like if a company is, if I can figure out what tech stack the company is working with, usually it's in the job description, but if not, then there are ways to find it from their website,
mm.
or you can just make some educated guesses. And then if you have any experience in those areas, then definitely make those explicit. If you have a competing thing, then maybe downplay that a bit, and just make sure that the recruiter will put you to the to call pile and not the reject pile, because that's what the CV should do. Because beyond that, it's all the interviews. It's just to get a call.
Yeah. That's I liked how you were like, okay, there's a specific purpose for your CV. It's to
Mm-hmm.
just get you selected for that first like HR interview call or
Yeah.
the line manager call, that screen call. That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's really good.
I mean, I didn't include it in the article, but there's a secondary goal. Like as you progress to, hopefully progress towards the interview process, people who are going to interview you are looking at your CV also.
Mm,
And the second purpose is have some little nuggets of projects that they can ask you about, and you can tell a story.
mm,
And I'm going to explain it in the interview article that you should have
mm,
these, I don't know, at least half a dozen stories that
Mhm.
show a problem, how you diagnose the problem or receive the problem, what solutions you choose, what metrics you were monitoring to decide if you're successful, and what was the impact. It doesn't even need to be a success story. Like I have a few good failure stories also that I can use. And once you have these stories, you can pull out one for a question, even if it's just slightly related or answering the question, and get an opportunity to explain what you did at a company. And the beginning of that could be like hiding those little nuggets, little triggers in your CV that can have a hiring manager say, okay, so this person was, I don't know, maintaining 100 million monthly users website. Let's ask about the traffic problems that they had to face, or what CDN strategy they choose, or whatever.
And I think that's a really important point. And I think some of those nuggets are what your advice is of put data points of what you did in
Definitely.
there, because those are the clues to the nuggets. Those are the breadcrumb trail to the story you're going to tell about, all of it. So that was really great advice. I like that.
It's really
it's
hard
normally
to do
only
also.
on salespeople's CVs that you see that.
Oh yeah, but I think, I mean, a little bit maybe connecting to our previous topic, but your goal at the company is to create value, and your success you should be able to measure your success, how much value you created. Oftentimes it's very abstract, but if every exercise is worth the effort here. Like if you can show that I brought down, I don't know, CI execution time from 15 minutes to 10 minutes and saving X developer hours per year, those are great metrics. Like those are something that are going to be asked about, and then you can tell your impact and what you did to achieve that. Yeah.
I totally agree. So I wanted to bring in one of the other ones. So
that's the controversial one.
I thought it was a fantastic insight. So I never had heard that. I'd heard loads of like, oh, AI is doing all the screening and so on and so forth, and so you need to like fool the AI in the applicant tracking system.
The latest is you need to use AI to perfect your CV to fool the AI on the other end. Like
exactly,
AI is fighting against AIs, but continue your question.
Well, but I found it super interesting, and I read the article that you linked to here, which is actually really interesting. I think where's the link? Somewhere in here. You had a link. You had a link somewhere in here. I thought about.
I don't remember what link you're referring to.
I think it's this one.
It's a bit related.
Sorry, related to this
the application numbers.
And I think it's really interesting, all of this, because but I find it fascinating that in my own experience, Peter, I hadn't seen AI being used to do this either. But I never know what recruiters do before they get the CVs to the manager. But I liked this perspective, and it was an interesting insight, basically.
I mean, let me just address this quickly, because what I'm stating here, what we are stating with Peter, but is who's seen more ATSs and recruiters than I think both of us combined. However, that is just not the case. Like there is no automatism in ATSs, in applicant tracking systems, that are automatically rejecting candidates. And I think if you think about it, it's easy to see why this is the case. There are people at companies, recruiters, who are especially paid for finding good talent. I don't think any good recruiter would trust any automatism to just fully reject, like letting go of all control and just giving it to an automatism. It's mass applications are a problem, and I heard crazy stories from friends. Like they put up a job post that's fully remote work, tech work in the US, and in 1 hour they have like 500 applicants and crazy numbers. But still, like all the applicant tracking systems have great way to very quickly go through a lot of applicants. Like you can quickly scan the CV, click on reject, get the next one immediately. So there is just no incentive for a recruiter to let go of this little bit of control, to at least take a look at the CV and fully trust some automatism, especially some AI that nobody knows how it's working and why it's making the decisions it's making to reject candidates. So,
Yeah.
and I think it's controversial because I see also on LinkedIn, I have also some ex-colleagues who are struggling to find jobs, and they seem to have found the reason for that is that they don't even get an interview because an AI is rejecting them.
I mean, I can understand that problem. You talked about the mass application thing because I've seen it. I've had to screen CVs. You get a lot of applications because you apply for a role that's remote friendly, and you get people that are really not qualified in places where you couldn't actually employ them.
It's crazy. Yeah,
applying
I mean, there are auto appliers out there that just scan for job posts and send your CVs in.
Spam.
Yeah, it's spam, exactly.
Yeah. So I can understand why people want to have something that can weed out at least those. But
if you're making your money, like that's your job to find candidates, would you risk losing one good candidate just because you could save, I don't know, even half an hour per day clicking reject? I don't think any recruiter would do that.
Good ones, maybe not, but there'll be plenty out there who will still,
Okay. Yeah.
But I've seen. I think like the interesting thing was from like very real experience. You're saying we don't really see that at the moment happening.
I mean, this is what I can
And
say. Like,
yeah,
I don't
and I like
imagine
that.
it would happen, and I never saw that. And the same goes for Peter.
Yeah, I think the last one that I wanted to ask you about in this, and
Yeah.
it's this is a really interesting one for me. It's you're actually saying here also. Actually, let me bring it back in. You say that writing parts of your CV with the help of AI, how, in our opinion, it's a high risk, low reward choice. And you basically want to sort of recommend not really using AI in
I tried to be more nuanced. Maybe I failed. I wanted to emphasize, like, there is a use case where somebody's just saying, okay, these are my experiences, just write a CV for me, or explain a bit more, like, or make my CV having a bit more impact, showing the data we talked about. And sometimes AI can do an okay job, but it's rare. And I mean, it depends on what kind of material you're feeding with. It's not going to be able to build a castle from sand. And the second is that it's very obvious if you don't edit it down. So what I'm advocating for is, or I try to advocate for, is don't use the output of AI verbatim in your CV. Use it as an input. Use it to unblock yourself if you have a creative blog, just like writing articles. It can be very valuable, but strongly remain in the driver's seat, because the efforts that you put in here can make or break a job.
Yeah,
can get you an interview or get you rejected.
I think I strongly agree with that. I would add, there's another use case for AI in writing your CV, which is use the AI to review what you've written and challenge, and
Can you explain?
Yeah, so one of the great things about AI is you say, hey, I'm trying to write a CV for an engineering manager job. Can you please review my CV from the perspective of a recruiter scanning and screening my CV?
Wow.
And give me feedback? And it's awesome. And so AI is really good as that kind of thinking sparring partner.
Yeah.
It'll prompt you for stuff. Now, it may not all be good, but it might catch a few things. That's really helpful.
That's a very good idea. I didn't think of that. Yeah. Like this is the job post. This is my intended application. You're the recruiter who has 10 seconds of scanning my CV. Would I get a call or not? And if not, what else is missing?
Yeah, and it'll suggest
that's a
like
good prompt.
formatting changes. It'll suggest, like, oh, you're missing these skills, whatever. Right? It's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think you're missing a trick if you don't use AI to
That's
actually
a fair point.
be that. Like, and frankly, I know you're probably going to write about the cover letter next week in the application process, but
Time permits. Yeah.
I have found AI to be especially GPT-4 and 4 Omni, because like a lot of people using 3.5 before, now 4 is available. I think 4 Omni is available to people, but I found the quality of GPT-4 say, here's a job description, that here's the online job description, here's my CV. Can you generate a tailored cover letter or a letter of motivation for this job? And it gets you a starting point that is surprisingly good
Interesting.
to edit. And I wouldn't say just don't blindly send it, because you're nuts to do that. Read it, change it, make it your way of speaking and tone. And if you have already built out prompts that generate a bit better language that sounds a bit more like you, then do that. But I think it can really accelerate the process
That's very good advice. Yeah.
tailoring. I think the other thing is then obviously here's the job description, as what we talked earlier. I was talking about maybe making a more tailored, let's say, engineering manager CV, for example. Here's the typical engineering manager. How does how would you compare my CV? But you can actually take the specific job description for that engineering manager and say, how does my CV, how does my CV compare to this job description for this company? And is there anything I should highlight? Ask me. One of the things that you miss in the prompting GPT, or I'm mainly using GPT, is tell it to prompt you for further questions before it actually answers what you're doing. So say, I'm trying to do this, but ask me follow-up questions before you suggest anything. There's like a power thing, because it actually asks you some great questions that then tailor its response better. So yeah,
that's interesting, because it can help with some of the typical ChatGPT answers that are just jumping to conclusions and yeah, that's a good
you get a
one.
way better quality response if you do that.
Okay, cool. And in your experience, it's really working like conversational, like you give this prompt, encourage it to ask follow-up questions, and you get some good follow-up questions
yeah. That's like I read an article about it, and then I tried it, and I was like, wow, okay, this is really good, because you get a much more tailored
okay.
I mean, try it. Just go to
Yeah, I
GPT
will.
Omni and say, can you you can do some experiment, like I want to do an exercise regime. Ask me questions about myself before you make a recommendation for what exercise I should do, to see how it
Very
goes.
interesting. Okay.
Surprisingly, not too bad. I mean, yeah.
Nice. Okay, thanks. Oh, that's a very good tip. Maybe we'll include it in the next part, because going back to your tip about writing a motivation letter, I think I agree with this little addendum that you should definitely, like, it should sound like you. It should be something that you would write if you would have, I don't know, 3 times as much time and all the ideas coming immediately to you. And I definitely like the use of AI and ChatGPT to this conversational assistant or helper or sounding body to try out ideas.
Yeah. And I don't think that's cheating. I think it's just, we talked about with Benoit about, like, and you said that, it's this phrase that's being repeated now. It's that people who use AI are going to replace people who don't use AI.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's all about finding, I mean, if you just sound like the default GPT is, the results are often kind of crappy and spammy and link baity and whatever. But I think if you
unlock the potential of my CV.
top 5
I have
things
to
you should know
confess,
about Jeremy.
this is a good point to confess.
You won't believe number 4.
One of my first article is about the one-on-ones that I wrote on the site, and its title is "Unlock the Potential of One-on-Ones" or something like this. It was less obviously AI written by then, so I like the thought behind it. But looking back now, it's a bit cringy to say that title. Maybe I should change it. Yeah,
Maybe boring titles and boring stuff is going to make a comeback. Like, just tell me the goods of the thing, and don't try.
Or titles are titles. Like let's keep them titles. This is a profession that's like writing is a profession since thousands of years. Your title should be not some clickbaity, interest-inducing kind of manipulation. It should be the title of the article, the summary. I don't know.
I struggle with that, because I think at a certain point, and you need to stop people scrolling to get
Yeah,
their attention, to
yeah.
click on an email in their inbox that's filtered already into another folder.
That's the big dilemma of 2024. I don't know. Yeah, right. Writing
Yeah.
content in
So
this age. Yeah,
I think like the rule that I read was just, if you're going to claim something in a title, deliver on it in the article, and people will trust you. If you don't deliver on it, then you're just going to get ignored over time.
yeah,
That's what I try and do. Uh,
yeah. But
and then I play the game a little bit.
I mean, I agree with that fully. But the problem is that people see a lot of content that we write in their news feeds on LinkedIn or whatever. They don't know who it's coming from. They don't know anything. So that it's building on the trust of an audience requires an audience to know who you are. It's a much more longer game than
Yeah. I have a small tactic I'm doing in my newsletter for that. I actually put an emoji at the same emoji at the beginning of the subject line of every newsletter every time.
Okay.
It's the rocket emoji.
Yeah, but that's your trademark emoji. So
Yeah, I love it.
that's a good one. Yeah, actually. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
but
that.
there's another. I got it from a website called they do. I think it's called growth.design. They do like breakdowns of how people build their products to make them more sticky, but in kind of like an ethical and good way and stuff. They have really good analysis,
Okay.
and they have in their emails, every single email begins with the popcorn emoji, and then and I got it from them because I was like, I know it's from them when they send it. They don't send emails that often, but I know it's their
Yeah,
email when
I
they
like
do.
that. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I use emojis sometimes in the newsletters because it really stands out in a list
Mhm.
of newsletters. But
Yeah.
having your own unique one, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, that's
Good.
been my. I don't know if it's working or not. I mean, I'd say that I'm. I have like I'd say like 60% of people seem to open my emails.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I have something like that also,
yeah.
but I have a very small audience,
Yeah.
which is good because a lot of them I not everyone, but a big part of them I know who they are and they know who I
Mm,
am
exactly. Yeah.
they are curious of what's up.
Yeah. I think there's
So
like high trust.
yeah. So talking about writing good titles, there is 4 key questions for managers at boosting performance to quickly jump on today's topic. Your latest article that I actually really liked. I have to maybe I can share this as an anecdote that when we start to work together and you introduce these 4 questions. I was a bit skeptical. Like I thought that my initial reaction was that, but these are not objective data. These are just some subjective bullshit. Who cares what I think? I have full of biases. Uh, any kind of metric. The point is to avoid biases and not emphasize them. So I was a bit skeptical, but when I started to use the tool with my teams and managers reporting to me, I found a lot of good value in it. And like with a lot of tools, just like with my preferences table an hour ago, the value is not necessarily the numbers or what you write in, but the value
Mhm.
is in the discussion that come up from these. So maybe you can explain a bit in just a few words what this is, and then we can talk a
Mm.
bit about the topic.
Yeah. Just to riff on what you said, the
Or yeah,
value
maybe just react to what I
the,
said.
the
That's a good
value is
idea
about
also.
the conversation.
Mm,
Everything is about having a richer, deeper, more meaningful conversation with the better context and better value. And my experience, so I read the book Nine Lies About Work, where they proposed these questions. Basically I wrote a whole article that actually maybe I can share that briefly if see if
yeah,
I can.
get off the screen.
Yeah, I wrote this article. It touched on my experience at
Mm-hmm.
Accenture, but essentially, in the article, I talked about that. Nine Lies About Work. They talk about that people can't reliably rate other people, and they talk about the idiosyncratic rater effect, and that the fact is that we can reliably rate our own experience, how does this person make me feel, but can we rate, is this person like, top 10% in the company about
Mhm.
like, what they do, a little bit harder to do subjectively, objectively. And
Yeah.
actually what they say is that basically what you see is just the raters themselves coming through and the ratings they give. And what they propose then is these questions. And I felt like these questions got buried in the article a little bit.
Mhm.
And that's why I kind of surfaced them in the article in this week's issue more, because I really feel the whole objective about this is to trigger a higher quality conversation. Firstly, with yourself, ask these questions, write your answer down. I think it's a really important part of what I felt was here. Is like, write it,
Yeah.
track it, do it
Yeah.
once a month,
See trends.
track it,
Yeah.
see it over time. Talk to your manager about what you wrote about your team members.
Mm.
And more importantly, when you say like, I don't want someone on my team, or this person is at risk, or they're in the middle, like, why is that? I need to take action about that. I need to go and talk
Mm.
to that person. And whatever this surface is, then you need to find a way to have another very high quality conversation with that person
Mhm.
to address what you're seeing and why you're writing it. Now, sometimes you're wrong, your feelings are wrong. And if you have a high quality conversation, it's going to change your feelings about that person, because you learn and understand more. Whereas if you just live with an assumption, it's also not good. So I think that's what it's all about. It's about surfacing it and forcing you to have that conversation with
Mhm.
with your manager, with the, they can coach you with, sometimes with the people team or
Mhm.
HR department. They can coach you with the person is obviously the most important conversation of all. And if you're prompting yourself to fill this in once a month at least, I think it keeps you honest, and it is kind of a forcing function to. It's so easy to let, especially low performance, slide.
Mhm.
It's also easy to ignore the middle or not praise enough. I mean, there's so many things that you can
Just
just
make
skip.
mistakes on every level.
Yeah, but like every one of those has a catastrophic impact on the team.
Mhm.
Every single one of those. And so by forcing yourself to think through each person monthly, I think these questions raise great, they raise they can put their finger on the topic of your
Mhm.
feelings about that person, and then you can go deeper about why that is. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A few comments. Well, first of all, there is this big assumption that I'm confident in my assessment. What if I have a new team? What if I have a little bit of an imposter syndrome? They are technically much more
Mm-hmm.
advanced than I am.
Mm-hmm.
What if I don't see it well and they are actually performing
Mm-hmm.
well? And
So if you have a team and this system is in place already, like we had, you can have a handover, and then I think you need to have a period
yeah.
where you figure stuff out for yourself. And like when you're when you're managing a new team, priority number one is to build trust
Mm-hmm.
with the people, so that you can get to know them all. And also that means you're building credibility. Trust is also about you as a manager building credibility. Go
Okay.
and solve some of their problems. Go and solve some of the team's problems that they bring to you. Like, build a relationship.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to start to see them. But there are some obvious behaviors. Like maybe someone's disruptive in the stand-up. Or someone's not paying attention in meetings and
Those are the
stuff.
easier ones. Yeah.
Boom,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
flags coming
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or there's someone that always volunteers and solves the team's problems, and you suddenly realize this is the person I can always rely on,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. But like, those, it should be, I mean, in a normal healthy day-to-day life of a team where you're actually involved in it, you
Yeah.
should start to see, I mean, just take it back to sports.
Hmm.
Playing, you're playing football, or I go back to my rowing, but in rowing, there's someone that's screwing up the boat, because you can feel them in the boat doing it, and you can see them doing it, and the coach sees them doing it, and the feedback is instant. And
Yeah.
I think it's not like the feedback loop is super long in teams either. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously,
Okay. No,
your experience as a
fair.
manager.
It's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
like building trust. And actually, this is maybe the second criticism I heard about these questions is a bit connected to trust. Like a manager is working to build up trust in the team. That's the most important foundation of a well-functioning team. I totally agree with it. But then, how can a manager answer to this question? Given what I know of this person's performance, I always want them on my team. How can a manager answer no to that? If like that would mean that the person failed as a manager because they couldn't build the trust and couldn't build a strong team that everyone, like the manager wants everyone on the team to be there.
So let me get this. You're saying,
yeah, sorry if I was not clear.
I don't want to. I want to. There's not enough trust for me to say that I have to. I can't be totally honest in my answers. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that to this question, given what I know about X's performance, I always want them on my team. I would always, let's say, I always want to answer strong yes to this because I want my team. This is my team I'm fighting for. There is nobody in this team who I would let down by not wanting them on my team.
I think that's the starting point that we should be at, right? Like, it's a good way to see human beings. Like, you want to see the inherent potential of people and develop them and grow them. And I think it's a foundational characteristic of Theory Y, right? It's unlocking the potential people have in them, right? So it's great. That's the way that you should be approaching it. But the reality is that the best teams, and by the way, the best teams are full of people like that. But it shouldn't be the default. Like, you shouldn't just blanket answer it. And I think I want to share something again here. I wrote an article. It's about the baseline principles for teams. It's taken from the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And it talks about the foundation of psychological safety and trust, then healthy conflict, commitment, accountability, and outcomes. And I think if you just stay on the bottom of the pyramid, but you don't go into healthy conflict where you tell people where something is broken, where people don't know what the commitments they're supposed to keep are, and they don't know how to be accountable, and we're not focused on collective outcomes, your team is going to fail, or your team is going to be kind of maybe just drifting along. And so
I see where you're getting at. It's a good point.
You've got to be able to, I mean, your objective is still to get them to the I want them on my team all the time very strongly, right?
Yeah.
But be honest with yourself about it, about what your answer is, about this person,
Yeah, no, you're right. And there is this expression, I think it's ruinous empathy or something like this in the Radical Candor book.
Exactly.
That when you're in the point that you're just nice, but you don't care deeply, and that's maybe that's related to that. Yeah, that's a good point.
I just think that if you can't face the hard truths head on, you're going to miss like one of the, you're going to mess up. There's 2 pillars for a manager of people, which is deliver results that are aligned with what the business needs, and help people to have high performance for themselves and for the team, and together, both in the team and help them beyond your team and beyond the company potentially to be successful. And your job is to help them do that. And I think those are the 2 things. And you're letting people down, you're letting yourself down if you're not really able to go for it with these. Now, if you're coming with that level of empathy, that's a good thing, because it can mean you can have hopefully a better, richer conversation with the person to understand why there's a gap in any of your answers, there. And sometimes it could be just you don't understand something. They're actually doing a great job, but you just missed it completely.
Yeah.
But now you had the conversation and wow, okay, now I have a deeper appreciation and my thing changed and nothing changed about that person, right? But I had the better
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. No, you're right. Plus, what is the alternative? Like as you showed earlier, that people are notoriously bad at rating other people. So yeah, sure, this might be a bit flawed. This is very subjective, but still, it's a good thing to have, like better than nothing or better than some other options.
And I think there's some solid research behind the idea, the idiosyncratic rater effects. I recommend people to go and read the book, 9 Lies About Work, and to go and read some of the underlying research that's been done and published. And it's pretty solid. Whereas a lot of the research around like performance ratings is much more fuzzy when it comes down to it. But it definitely suits the Tayloristic mindset we talked about earlier to have that more cut and dried approach. So yeah,
Okay, cool. No, that's a good answer. Thanks. I have another one. You advise people to record these. You advise managers to discuss with their managers the results. So I can imagine in an ideal organization, these data bubbles up to the VP of engineering or even CTO level, where they have a big sheet of their whole organization, and they can have very interesting trends being observed about engagement, morale, performance, everything. In today's wartime world, don't you think there's a risk of taking this data out of context? And if you agree that there is, how do you think it could be counterbalanced or helped?
Yeah, I even have like a caution about it because I think companies they're looking to find those people who might not be performing well, and I've seen it like you have a little flag raise of maybe we have an issue with this person, and boom, they're like, okay, you should put them on a performance improvement plan or a PIP.
I mean, you cannot blame a CTO. Like they get a mandate that you need to let 20% go.
Yeah.
Like first thing you're gonna check is your spreadsheet about who's at risk at low performance,
and directly jump. Okay, and it's a one-way street. It's that they put them on a PIP and boom, they don't expect this person to stay. Like it's like, and it's a witch hunt. And I think I feel like I've sensed it. I've seen it. I think as a manager, I think this at risk of low performance is at risk, right? So, think about why you feel like that. And as I wrote, like obviously there are people maybe who really are having low performance and maybe too low performance, and there's not, and what you do isn't that maybe there's something that's not a right fit for them in the role and whatever. You can try different avenues both inside the company, but sometimes they have to leave. That's the reality of we're not a family, we're like a sports team, and sports teams, people get benched, people get sold in teams and so on, right? So I think and people need to find it's not every company and not every job is the right fit for everyone. It can't be. And so I say work with the people, the HR department around that. You should don't try and do that on your own, but
like taking it out of context, like I can imagine that, okay, I know layoffs are coming in my company. I have 2 people who are at risk at low performance, but I'm not going to put it in my database because then the CTO is going to see it, and I'm just going to handle it on my own, like hide this fact.
Yeah. So, so first thought, just talking on like and this is why my highlight of the week was, the Maya Angelou quote, which is that, people are going to, I think you need to share it's people will forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
I love that.
And this is the bar that you should measure yourself against in the conversations. And if someone has to leave the company, it should not be a surprise. There should be a good lay up to it, and they should know why it's all happening, and it shouldn't be like some confusion. So I think that's the first thing that I wanted to sort of say is that sometimes we have to manage that, and especially in companies that grew massively and
Mm.
just had a very low bar for hiring and never managed performance, and people drifted for years and then they were stuck. I think I mean, I've seen it. So like, I think sometimes people have to leave, or
Yeah.
people, So, but how you make them feel in all of it is crucial. So there's that. Addressing the bigger question, going back to what you said, I think the thing that concerns me about the question, Peter, is that this lack of psychological safety in the organization you describe.
Yeah.
And I think that if there is that lack, maybe you should hide it. I don't know, if you owe it to the people, like, go back to what I just said, the Maya Angelou quote about how will they make them feel? Have you done everything you can do as a manager? And if you're in an environment where if you tick that box, that person is on a one-way street out of the organization. In some countries, like in the US, they can be just blanket laid off. And in some companies I have worked at, they implemented a 9-box model, and then they took the quadrant of the 9-box and they took the bottom left, and then they eliminated everyone in the first quarter from that. Then they picked out people from the other quadrants in the next quarter, and every quarter they were laying off 5 to 10% of the company through the 9-box. And they weren't talking to managers; they were just going and doing it. And obviously, if you're in an environment like that, I think you need to be more cautious about that. You need to. It's more political. It directly is. And I mean, sorry for the leaders who they created that environment. And so, as a manager, when you operate in that environment, I think you're in a game. It's a game, and you need to do what you can to protect your team. But ultimately, you as a manager are on the line to deliver stuff. And in that, I mean, it's a tough environment. It's really hard, right? It's not
the way I see it, if you do that, like if somebody on your team is risk of low performance, and because of all the reasons you explained, you make the decision to hide this fact from leadership, the consequences are that you're on your own. Like you're not gonna have the help of HR, you're not gonna have the help of your manager, and both you and the person at risk of low performance is in a worse place. So
yeah. Just one thing on that. In the scenario where they really are a low performer and you have actually worked on it, look, honestly, don't keep them around. It's not helping the company. It's not going to help you.
It's not going to help them either.
Frankly, some people who are usually in that category, they drain all your energy. The people who you tick, I wouldn't want them on my team or on the low performance. They drain so much energy that you don't spend time on everyone else in the team, and you need to move them out of those categories as quick as you can. And the good managers find a way to help them turn into good performance. Sometimes it's not possible, even for the greatest manager in the world. But the bad managers will just directly fire them or move them on, hide them, and hide the fact, and just do a swap with someone else in another team. And like, I got rid of it, and then suddenly they might turn out to be great performer in another team, So, but yeah.
This makes me remember something. We are going way over time, but I have to ask. I read about this somewhere, that one of the mistakes of a manager is to paying too much attention of low performance and not enough attention of high performers.
Exactly.
And I remember when I was reading this, I was like, oh, wait, but the good performers, they take care of themselves. I need to help the low performers. Just like on a person, you need to focus on your strengths and how you can use that to perform better. On a team also, you need to focus a lot on the high performers to ensure that they can have their positive impact.
We are over time. This is, I think, a valuable conversation. So you have a star player in your team, your football team. You have a fantastic player. They're just, the goalkeeper. They just save so many goals. The team is mediocre, but they save so many goals that you actually have a better results, right? That goalkeeper, you don't address some of the other low performance in the team. they're going to go, oh, you know what? I'm better than everyone else here. I want to play with other people at a much higher level. They're going to leave. They're going
Yeah.
to leave your team. So yes, you have to look after high performers, and you need to bring everyone up. You always need to bring everyone up. And this goes back to the other question that we used to have in the database that we built together, which was the at risk of leaving. You know, the kind of
Yes.
like, you know, because I think that's another valuable one that you should be tracking. And you know, credit to Fred, our CTO at Dashlane, who put that in place and was running that for a long time, because I think this kind of tracking the retention risk of someone is an important factor alongside these, and usually connected somehow, you know.
And actually I found this data very useful when I was looking at my organization, and I saw that it was a big enough organization that I could abstract out some trends, and I could see that the retention risk is going up month by month. I knew that I need to talk with managers in my team to bring up the topic, what can we do in general, and not just for those who are already identified, but those who don't have high retention risk in their teams, to, you know, keep an eye out, because this is something is happening at the company that makes people high retention risk. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a good thing to track.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, my view is, if you come across this, it's new, give it 3 months, track it. You know, we're going to probably make some spreadsheet or Notion thing that you can copy and use if you really want. I mean, it's not rocket science to build this.
Yeah, I mean, 4 questions, and strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree.
It's not rocket science.
It's not.
But you know, try it. Just see. I'd love to get some feedback if you try it. Make it, if you're in an environment where you're uncomfortable about sharing it with your manager, just use it privately. See how it makes, see what behaviors it drives.
Even if you don't share it with anyone, like just a self exercise, like, okay, I don't know why, I cannot put a pin on it, but this person, I don't want them on my team. I don't know why they are shipping a lot of code, or and then you start thinking about, why is that? Why do I feel like this? Well, what is the behavior that triggers this feeling? And then looking at that, maybe it's something personal, or maybe actually some of the behavior of this rockstar programmer are not helpful for the team.
Yeah, in fact, they're an asshole.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah. Okay,
they don't
cool.
turn up to stand up. They don't, when they do,
Or
they're
they
not
talk
there.
down to people.
Yeah.
I had a very good quote the other week, that rockstar programmers, I don't know what was the expression the quote was using, they are trying to create a culture of excellence, but instead what they managed to do is create a culture of fear.
Yes.
And I really like that expression, and this is what I will use when I need to argue against the glorification of hero programmers next time in an organization, because I oftentimes they can be very, very toxic to the teams. I mean, oftentimes they can be great examples, and there are high performing rockstar programmers who are great to set as an example, and they are very good in mentoring juniors and everything. So of course there are a lot, but there is this archetype where people tend to overlook their soft skill fallacies or communication mistakes or empathy or anything, because they ship a lot of code, and I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I don't know. I think I would love to get one more point, because we are covering 2 weeks data, so we can go 2 weeks article,
longer.
so we can go a little bit longer. The week before last one, you had an article about sharing at 20%. I really like that. I actually used it to some extent in my CV LinkedIn article with Peter Batis, because the first article, I wrote the draft, showed it to him, asked for input. As you can guess, he didn't have much input, because he saw the final version. And with this CV one, I was like, okay, these are the bullet points. Here is the shared document. I'm working on this. Anytime you have some input, please add it. He was adding a lot of good input. The article changed a lot from the first draft till the final published version.
And it's a good article, a really good article.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the share 20% thing and your reflections on it.
It's a pattern, right? Actually, it's a power. I don't know. Is it a power law? It's some kind of like. It's actually the foundation of agile and release early, release often. It's actually in everything. But like often I found myself having to sort of coach folks in who have an idea or writing a document, but actually you can apply this to uh, creating a startup, and talk to users, like put what you're doing in front of users. It's the same principle, really.
Yeah.
It's like put a landing page in front of users, don't build the product. Or do a mock-up and test that on them. I think that's the basis of this. It's just we're all it's probably one of the most common things I've had to coach people on is go and share your idea. Show the four bullet points. And frankly, every time where I don't, and we always still fall into the trap. It's so much. And that's what I tried to track in this article, is the emotional journey if you don't do it, of like, get to 80%, you think I've pretty much got everything. There's a bit, like I've got some grammar stuff to do, or maybe a few more things to flesh out, but all the big ideas are in there. And then people rip into it, and they tear it apart, and your emotions go through the floor. And you never fully recover from that.
That's a key observation, I think, because when you reach 80%, you're emotionally connected to your work at that point. So it's really hard to take any kind of criticism, especially foundational one, like the whole direction you were choosing is actually just a minor aspect, and here is this big deal you didn't address. It's really hard to take this kind of feedback non-defensively and constructively. Whilst if you share very early, like, hey, here's this problem, these are the 3 points that I think we should do about this, these are the key aspects of this problem. By the end of this week, I want to reach a point where I explain this fully, but I'm sharing these 3 points now because just like what you talked about with ChatGPT, like I want to get a good feedback, like, do you agree with this? Am I seeing it well? Is there something important I'm missing? And the reason why it's really hard to do is I'm going to argue with you. I think it's not every time that sharing 100% doesn't work well, and that's the problem, because there are some good examples. Sometimes you nail the first version, and you feel really proud, and you feel that, okay, I know how to do this, and that gives a bad feedback to your behavior because
exactly,
it's an exception.
But there is. So it's interesting. This goes back to the Ikea Effect article I wrote about like people are attached to the Ikea furniture because they build it themselves. You can produce a brilliant thing that everyone agrees with, but did you take them with you? Because did they build it with you? Did they work on that thing with you? Did you bring them along on the journey of what you were trying to do? When you created that amazing document that everyone, it's there, but then do they follow along with what you, what you have?
That's a very good point. Like why are you writing what you're writing? You want to have some impact. You're making your work much easier if you involve people, others who are impacted by this.
Yeah, because usually what we're doing is trying to drive some kind of change or whatever. You got to measure not just the time it took you to do the document, which could have been much shorter and produce something amazing, but also the adoption period after. And it's the overall elapsed time that's the most important, from like idea to the change. And I think that so if you believe that collaboration is important, that bringing other people along with you is important,
at this point you should.
Well, I hope so, but I think there are organizations where it's that Tayloristic approach, and that's having its comeback period now with wartime. So we're going to see that more in organizations.
Okay, so getting back to this, so my point is that I find it very useful. I was lucky because I'm a co-author at this time, so I could share 20%. But what do you do if you're alone writing for an audience publicly? How do you adapt this share early? And a related question is, why did you put aside the article that you wanted to write this week?
Yeah, so the whole thing is my newsletter post shipped this morning, and I wrote it last night because the one I was iterating on last week, I shelved. So the backstory is, I wanted to actually, this is even more ironic. I wanted to share an outline of the book I want to write about engineering management and delivery, and I have to say, I think it just felt, how do I describe this? There were two things I felt wrong with it. One was I didn't feel like I was able to fully just get enough of the bare bones of my idea out to be able to get valuable feedback by shipping something early. I felt like I was at an earlier stage. And the other bit was that to be honest, I felt like I felt like I was copying a bunch of too many things, and I just needed for it to gestate a little bit more. And the mind map that I'm working on is probably helping me come back a bit more to it. But it wasn't 20%. You know, I felt like if you only share one bullet point of an idea when it needs three, there's a problem. And that was where I was at. I was actually, the further irony was I was trying to actually share something super early about an idea which I feel is still pretty scary to put out there. Is like, I would like to write a book about some of this and publish it, self-publish it at the moment, and put the outline out there. And it wasn't ready, so that's hence the pivot. Yeah,
I think the other difference I think is, while you're in a company context and you're working on something, you have this safety of supporters and alliances that you can rely on. But when you're writing to an audience, you have this pressure that I need to provide some value. It needs to be transactional, you know, like I'm asking for your time. Here's what I'm adding in return. And this just helps this feeling of this is just too early to share, because you're asking for someone's time who's you're just not giving much. You're just getting their input for your benefit. So I think that's why it's hard. But and also arguably, I think newsletters and blogs and these are not good platforms for sharing early ideas. There are some inherent expectations about an article, and it's just hard to go out that, hey, here are my random thoughts about this topic. Can you help me figure this out so I can write a proper article? I'm not sure that's working.
I think you put your finger on it a lot. You know, there's a kind of, we talk about the headline, right? The headline, and then the document needs to deliver and so on. I mean, I think like at least you and I, we've created a contract with our newsletter followers where we are trying to provide some level of value every week. That's different from tweeting or putting out LinkedIn, or writing short LinkedIn posts.
Okay.
Or maybe setting an expectation where I'm gonna scribble some stuff out and it's a feed of my random thoughts. Follow it or not. You set the level of contract you want, and I think we're both setting a bar of trying to provide some kind of something helpful to reflect or actionable every week.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. Actually, I like the example of LinkedIn and Twitter. The expectations are lower there. But maybe there is a layer missing. Like, I can imagine some kind of support group of fellow writers or engineering leaders, or where there is this safety, and the transactional value is coming from, sometimes I share something and you give feedback. Sometimes you share something and I give feedback. Maybe this is something that could be built.
That can work in like groups. Watch this space, because I think I will be once I get sort of an outline that I share and get some feedback on. There will be a call out for beta readers, or say alpha readers, people to just kick the tires and tell me, oh, I really didn't get that bit, or the kind of questions you ask, which I think are great. Always your devil's advocate questions are fantastic, Peter. So, yeah, the different thinkers, people who come at it from a slightly different angle than me. And then I think, yeah, I'll probably be putting out stuff a bit more in a smaller context for that, for whoever wants to be in it. But that'll be my approach to trying to testing the book.
Yeah, no, and I really like the idea of I mean, I encourage you to write these thoughts in a book because I think it can be variable, and I still like that as a, well, as you can see behind me, I like that as a medium.
Yeah. My shelves are going up. I've got,
Yeah, you need to upgrade your background.
yeah. Actually, they'll still be to the side, but you won't see them. But yeah, shelves are going up.
Yeah, it's more of a necessity than intentional. But yeah. Okay. I think we're nearing our time. I don't know if I ask you about your home server or not.
So I think I almost rather not talk about it. I'd just say if you try to
Maybe
click on some links on my server or my newsletter, it was down for actually a couple of days. But we're back. Maybe not in the way I wanted it to be. And short version, I clicked on I accidentally actually clicked up on an upgrade button. Got some beta software which put in a new version of the Linux kernel, which missed some. Yeah, thank you, Peter, for the red. Is just,
That's just add some soul to the pain.
Yeah,
this is the 1 week response time chart for the retrospective.com that you're hosting for us, and I can imagine that based on this, your last week was
well. So I did a follow-on migration, as you see the downtime on Saturday, and I think it was successful because the latency that you see post that is much less on the site. And the little outage this morning was, I think the server I had automatic security updates and reboots turned on, and it went down for a bit. I think that's what happened to it.
This is, I think, what's acceptable, and this is what probably gives you a lot of headache.
But you're missing the bit before, yeah.
I mean, this is as far as it goes. So
yeah, but it was painful, and like, I don't know, that's part of home lab hosting and stuff. It's like, we had friends staying with us over the weekend when I had the outage. Okay, I just had to let it go. I mean, yeah, it was a niggle.
That's actually, I think it's a very good exercise of, as you say, to be comfortable with
Zen,
not being perfect. Like, and I think it can be applied to our day-to-day jobs also. I don't think a good manager is 100% good manager, because then they don't have enough work, or then they don't have enough, they are not paying attention to the right stuff. It's like there is this saying that in soccer, the team that's scoring from all of their actions, that's not the best team, because then they are not taking enough attacks, and I think it's a bit similar. Like, you need to be comfortable that home serving a website, it's more of a hobby, and if you have friends over, be there with them in your head.
Yeah, and that was the decision I did. Yeah, that was my decision. I was like, okay, they're here. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna go to the beach. We're gonna do stuff, and I'm just gonna leave it, and it's down, and that's painful, and
you
whatever.
get there and solve it.
And I mean, it's different when you're hosting like Plex or something in your home, and the media stuff goes down. But when it's a website that's external, that's your newsletter or whatever, it's a bit more painful. But that's, like, I've had really good uptime, great, like, I mean, the only uptimes I don't, when I'm restarting or when I'm doing like doing an update or whatever, usually, and I probably update a bit too much, but and basically what happened was that I was running everything in an LXD container, and so it was running pretty close to the bare metal, and it was Docker running inside LXD, and it worked. It was sweet because it was directly, I'd mapped host from the NAS, the host file system into the container, and the latency, you could see it, like, everything was snappy and good. And QNAP, which is why I'm getting rid of them for like everything, their latest version, the kernel is missing a bunch of modules that you need for the LXD container to be able to run Docker inside, and doesn't have it anymore. They're still on they have a
custom
old
kernel
version of the kernel. it's like proprietary software made of open source. So I'm not a fan of QNAP. That's why I bought the hardware. I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got the bits. I've got all the bits. It's all ready.
Nice.
SSDs, RAM, waiting, and hopefully next week my
Hmm.
new server will arrive. And I decided to buy a second one, so I'm going to have an HA set up. So
Nice. Nice.
I'm done with this. Like, okay, I guess that's the other learning is, right? Okay, what did I learn from it? I'm going to be okay. I'm done with running a single container, or I'm part of this was a upgrade of my network anyway to 10G. I'm going to have HA for the VM so that I can like have the host do restarts and stuff, and even the VM itself will be HA. I'll run in. I'm going to do some fun stuff. Let's just say we can talk about it later. But
Yeah.
it was a good
Maybe
learning.
we can talk about it later. Yeah.
But interesting. So apologies if it was down. No, it's not back better. By the way, the solution in the end. Oh, by the way, the worst was. So I had a VM. So I moved everything to VM. Thank goodness everything was infrastructure as code on the Docker side, right? But I had to rebuild a new VM to host my Docker. And then that VM had a cataclysm. My NAS, I don't know what happened to it, but because it's running now beta software, it went down. The whole thing went down, and my VM had a corrupted disk which I couldn't restore, and so I had to rebuild the VM. And even then, with the rebuilt VM, it was accessing then the NAS via NFS. So it was going through my network to access the disks. So it was much more latency than talking directly to the raw disks. It was going via so that's why you saw really high response times. And so my downtime on Saturday was because I had to stop everything so that I could copy the files over into the VM's disk, which is actually, so the VM can kind of like natively talk to everything. And after that migration, that was why it was down. And after that migration, you can really see the latencies are much more stable. Still victim to the NAS's, like my backup jobs and everything affect the performance of the VM significantly. So like there are some spikes you can see at the nighttime, but I think it's acceptable. It's not where I'm going to be in the future, but it's just
No, it's good enough. And I mean, I just last thing I'm curious is that I saw on your site you're using the Cloudflare's always on, or I don't know how is it called, the kind of caching.
It doesn't work with tunnels.
Okay.
I tried really hard. I've even pre-populated the Internet Archive's cache pages of my website, so I've actually gone through and auto-calculated it, done it, but it doesn't seem to work. And I've seen other people have the same issue, and I haven't had the time to figure out why it's not.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's a minor thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It failed me.
Well, a lot of good learnings and everything. Yeah.
Actually, I'm one other thing I'll do is I'm going to implement like a thing that detects when I'm down and just switches on the Cloudflare side to a different site that says, "Oh, oops, we're down for a bit, but come back." And
better than the default error page.
Exactly. Yeah, the Cloudflare tunnel error that you see.
Yeah. Well, I hope nobody's ever going to see that page that you will work on. So.
We'll get there. Look, it's a fantastic learning. That's why I do it.
Yeah. I wrote about this. Yeah, there are a lot of good direct and indirect ways, like just what we talked about before, accepting that you're down, but there are higher priority things in your life now, and getting comfortable with it. That's also a very good leadership skill, being pragmatic about
just a precision on that. I think if your production is down, everything else should stop and you should fix it. There's more the analogy of like there are many fires often that you deal with as a manager. Sometimes you have to let a few burn and focus on the most important thing.
That's what I meant. Yeah. No, I don't. I can hardly imagine there is any case where production being done is just fine. I'm having my beer.
It's okay. Everything's fine. Fire burning behind. The DevOps meme.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I had a lot of frustrations also this week about microcontrollers, but I think we are nearing 2 hours, so maybe that's something we can talk about next time.
And Peter, I'm really looking forward to hearing the CraftCon and Gergely's event.
Yeah, me too. Actually, it's been a long time I've been to a live conference, so that's one of the things I'm curious about. Like, how do in-person conferences work post-COVID. I've been to a few meetups, but no big conference like this. This is arguably the biggest engineering and engineering leadership conference in Hungary. It's actually truly international. All the speakers are speaking in English, and I think the majority of the speakers and the guests are from abroad. And yeah, there's going to be a meetup with Gergely Orosz tomorrow evening, actually, about how development is changing. Curious about that too.
You know, if you get a chance, I'd love to have him on as a guest.
I don't know him in person, so it's a long shot, but yeah, I mean, I think if we have some good topics, then why not?
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome, Peter. It's been brilliant. We went long. Sorry for those.
I mean, we got some feedback that somebody wished that we would have gone deeper into some topics. I think
we did today.
We did plenty of those today. Maybe we should still find the balance of, or just be realistic and just have less topics, or just be comfortable with being over time. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
We'll do. Give us feedback. You know, that's the best thing you can do. If you got to this point, please give us feedback. You're one of very few, so please do.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Awesome. I hope everyone has a good.
Week.
Yeah, we'll be going. That's this. Over and out.
Yeah.